gentlemen, my name is Matthew McCoy. I'm the chair of the North Kingstown 350th Anniversary Steering Committee. Thank you for coming tonight. Let me see a show of hands of how many people have been to one of our other lectures. All right. And how many of you are from Saunderstown? All right. So the first thing I'll mention to you is here in the building and out by the entrance, there's a copy of the town's 350th anniversary commemorative booklet. Disregard the $5 on top. It's free. Feel happy to take as many of these as you like home. It's got a nice fold-out map of the town, including beautiful Saunderstown on there. So all of our lectures are being recorded thanks to one of our sponsors, Fresh Maps. And if you go to the town website, northkingstownri.gov, there's a pull-down menu for the 350th anniversary, and it'll take you to the speaker series. You can click on the link, it takes you to the YouTube website. And if you happen to miss Tim Cranston's lecture in a kayak in Whitford, about Whitford, you can see that, or one on Annaquatucket or Quinnesset or some of the other villages here in town. So anyway, that's that. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers for tonight. John Edwards is a retired librarian and the past director of the Willett Free Library. He's the fourth generation of his family to have ties here to Saunderstown. So let's give a round of applause. And Whit Hill is the current executive board member for the library, the Willett Free Library, in charge of building and grounds. Third generation of his family with ties here to Saunderstown. Great-grandparents would take the ferry from Jamestown to Saunderstown, and you'll learn about the ferry tonight. And the library is on Ferry Road, and the library newsletter is called The Ferry Whistle for a reason. And I understand from the plaque back there that Whit is quite the sailor. So, so enjoy.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you.
The spot that we're on tonight lies upon the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. We honor and respect the enduring and continuing relationship between the indigenous people and this land by teaching and learning more about their history and present-day communities, and by becoming stewards of the land we too inhabit. Many thanks to the Willett Free Library, the Saunderstown Yacht Club, and to the North Kingstown 350th Anniversary Steering Committee. Thank you, Matt, for sponsoring this talk. And here are a few Saunderstown things to mention that aren't part of the slideshow. Rhode Island Black Storytellers are doing a program as part of Casey Farms' Juneteenth, an open farm celebration on Saturday, June 15th. That's a week from this Saturday, and in the morning, I believe. The Birthplace of Gilbert Stuart and the North Kingstown Community is the title of a program at the Gilbert Stuart Birthplace on Saturday, June 22nd. And there will be a talk on North Kingstown's libraries on December 12th at the Town Hall. And I think all of these talks are going to be videoed and posted on this website. This is the 350th anniversary section of the Town of North Kingstown website. And particularly, we'll get to it later, but call your attention to the one that's on the screen that was given by Tim Cranston on Feb 8. If you haven't seen that, check it out.
Can you speak up?
I'll try. Okay.
It's hard to hear you.
Summertime in Saunderstown has always been busy. In addition to fun on the tennis courts and on the water, summers have been punctuated by the St. John's Summer Fair, Ice Cream Social with Lafayette Band Concert, and Lobster Luncheon. The community-wide volunteer effort of the Willett Free Library Book, Bake, and Art Sale was a major feature of the summer for many years, especially under the leadership of Barbara Stroily. This year, mark your calendars at the Willett Free Library. Programs every day. Summer reading program for all ages. Garden tour on Saturday, June 29th. My wife and I run a book discussion group, and what is the date of that? It's in June. You check. Monday, June 24th is the next book discussion. The book is called The Stolen Coast, and the author is Dwyer Murphy, and it's a heist book. Okay.
The book was stolen?
And it's at the Chapel of St. John the Divine on June 23rd, Strawberry Shortcake Sunday at 10:30. On July 10th, Lafayette Band Concert and Ice Cream Social continues. July 19th, for the
77th straight band concert.
The 77th straight band concert. Wow. July 19th, something new, an acoustic open mic night. If you're interested in participating, talk to me. If you know somebody who should participate, talk to me and I'll twist their arm for you. August 4th is the date of the lobster lunch. Let's go to the next.
Let's go to the next.
Yeah, let's go to the next.
There's the next.
Okay, where is Saunderstown, Whit?
Saunderstown extends from eastern Connecticut, and we call that Saunderstown, Connecticut, or roughly the zip code of Saunderstown, which also includes some of Narragansett. Some people believe that it's just the area of the village, what my brother refers to as the Magic Kingdom. And John seems to think that I think it's just my house. So,
many of you folks probably knew my dad, Knight Edwards, and he used to say that you can find Saunderstown. It's about halfway between the old bootlegger's house and the new grass mansion. So that's...
and we'll talk more about
We'll talk a little bit more.
bit.
Okay. Let's go to the next. Go ahead. Rich.
So, nobody really fully understands the history of Saunderstown until you understand that it started with the Pennsylvanian rocks of the Narragansett Basin, which is a large terminal moraine formed during a melt somewhere between 18,000 and 14,000 years ago.
I love it when you talk about geology.
And you know I'm a geologist. So this stone, which is in the village, in the Magic Kingdom of Saunderstown, and was carved, not entirely sure when, not in the 1660s, but probably sometime in the late 19th century, early 20th, to commemorate the sale of Saunderstown by the natives. And I'm not going to try to pronounce all of the names there, but my antinomy to...
Kojiniquan.
Thank you. Want to keep going?
No.
And eventually to Captain Thomas Willett. And there's a lot of reference, there's a lot of information about that sort of transition. And if you think about it, the idea of selling land, the idea that natives would sell land, which was not something they thought that they could own, right? It's just a thing that they enjoyed, lived in. There's more about that. So it's an interesting sort of transition of this land from the natives to Captain Willett and others.
So what you see on the left side is a screenshot from the records of the proprietors of the Narragansett. It's a transcript of the deed. And I don't know if you can read this. I can read you the first little bit that's highlighted in yellow. Know all men by these presents that I, Kojiniquan, chief sachem of Narragansett, in consideration of the great love and affection I do bear unto Englishmen, especially Mr. John Winthrop, Governor of Connecticut, Major Humphrey Atherton of Massachusetts, Richard Smith Sr., etc. So normally in a deed, the in consideration, after that comes the price, right? But in this case, they rigged it so that the indigenous people were just giving it away. And Roger Williams apparently didn't like this very much. And you can probably read more about this in The Wordy Shipmates by Sarah Vowell, or Nathaniel Philbrick's Mayflower. I guess after King Philip's War, Roger Williams kind of came around, and he was no longer as sympathetic to the indigenous as he had been. Let's go to the next. So I'm the one who has the thing. Yeah, okay.
You're in charge.
Here we go. So this gives you the idea of how, do you think the indigenous people would have approved of this way of splitting up land? I don't think so. But here you can see, use that laser pointer.
Oops.
You got it?
Nope. I broke it. Somebody broke it.
Well, okay.
All right.
So this area right here is Saunderstown, and then what is labeled Richardson is where Casey Farm is now. Yeah. Okay, we can go.
You broke it.
Did I? Yeah, straight lines. Oh, are we okay?
The whole thing broken?
The whole thing is
Did we turn it off?
turned off.
Turned
yeah,
off.
Okay, here we go. Oh,
You can tell we're also technologically gifted. Hey, look at
there
that.
we go. Okay. The history of Saunderstown is peppered with famous and not so famous names. Thomas Willett, the Carpenter family, and starting in the middle of the 19th century, the Saunders family, including Thomas Willett Stillman Saunders. And I'm not sure, was he actually related to the Willett family? I don't know that. Anyway, these pictures Gigi took across Boston Neck Road in the Willett Carpenter Cemetery, which is right on Carroll Road near the intersection of Minor Road. The history of the village this history was printed in 1985. Many of you have read this multiple times, probably. Illustrations by Shirley W. Sheldon. A chronological rendering that begins before the Atherton Purchase and ends in the post-World War II era with the development of excellent highways, bringing Saunderstown within easy reach of great numbers of people. And although this book is out of print, there are plans to print it or put it on the Willett Free Library website.
There'll be a PDF, a scan of the booklet, so you'll be able to read it on issue from the library website in the next couple months.
Is it going to be available as an audiobook as well?
If you'd like.
So it's going to be scanned and put on the library website. Wonderful resource. And one of Irv's favorite sources was the diary of Florence Bayard Lafarge. And I hadn't really thought about that before, and I realized, I got to get a hold of that. So we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to quote her a little bit as we go along here. We're going to talk a little bit more about Florence Bayard Lafarge as we go along. And here's this nice picture of Irving Sheldon and Shirley Sheldon.
No, he was never that young.
It doesn't seem possible, does it?
Shell told me that he thought this picture was taken in Arizona, but I'm pretty sure that's Dutch Island, Dutch Island Lighthouse, right about there. Yeah, right.
These are the cactuses.
The cactuses down at Spindrift. Right. Okay. The deep water off the Willett Farm just south of Casey Point provided a great opportunity to develop a shipbuilding operation, and this is possibly the first steam ferry built at Saunderstown in the 1880s. J.A. Saunders was the father of Daniel, John, Stillman, and Martin. Eventually, there were so many shipbuilding Saunderses here that the locality changed its name from Willettville to Saunderstown. And by the way, we just skipped over the entire colonial period and the first half of the 19th century, right? I think the Willets were tree farmers. They were involved in silviculture during that time. And then, they got together with the descendants, but by the middle of the 19th century, they were carpenters, got together with the Saunderses and said, hey, why don't you come and build a boatyard over here? And that's what happened. This is the Saunders Arnold house, built around 1855. And the bit at the top is from the National Register of Historic Places nomination form. And this is the original home of the Willett Free Library.
Is it?
It's on Ferry Road.
Sort of across from the library and down a house or two?
Yeah.
You may think of it as the Arnold House.
And here's what the waterfront looked like in about 1891. And people handed me these wonderful colorized postcards. The library's got a nice collection of them, and a couple of people in the community handed a few to me to scan. And
So they used to have them.
well, yeah. So Saunders House was a venture of Stillman Saunders, Alonzo T. Cross of Cross Pen fame, and others. There's an oral history that you can get to on the Willett Free Library website with Bob Eaton, and he talks about this wonderful lapstrake skiff that's in the foreground of this photo. And I'm pretty sure that most of these postcards were a production of Emma Briggs, who was a protege of Stillman Saunders and also in the family that ran the grocery store. We had actually 2 different grocery stores within a short distance of here at one time. Wish we had that now.
Working on it.
And here's what the waterfront looked like in 1958. So just to sort of compare these two. This is the SYC.
I think that's later than 58.
Oh,
Maybe around
good.
60. I was born in 56, and I remember the old clubhouse, which you see there behind the signal mast, and the new clubhouse was just being built, but I was remembering it being built, so I was probably at least 4. So it might be 1960.
Okay, so close.
Well, you've got a question mark, so I was just adding
Thank you.
what I could.
So Theo says 1960.
Ish.
And speak up, anybody, if you want to correct any dates here, because we just made them up,
Do you
basically.
want to take a brief pause here and edit that on the slide?
Yeah, let's. Yeah.
That's the only one I've seen that has both the old and the new.
Yeah, isn't that great? Here is Main Street looking west towards Willett Road before 1895.
Theo, do you know who that is on the street?
That's my younger sister.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that the ferries didn't really start running from Saunderstown until 1895, and it was only way after that it became known as Ferry Road.
So this is Ferry Road looking to the west, going uphill, and this house is on the east corner of Ferry and Willett, and actually that's the L of the house. So the Curran house or the Bennett house, right? And is the next one?
Here's what it looks like today.
You can see the connection.
So Benoni Lockwood was the first summer resident, and he started to rent in 1875. And he attracted a crowd of luminaries who stayed for the summer or visited. And these included the Wharton family, Cousin Edith, author of The Age of Innocence, the Lafarge family, Owen Wister, author of the original Western novel The Virginian, and Theodore Roosevelt. Does anybody know, what about this photo, Theo? Can you tell us when this one was taken? Because
There's a date in the corner.
no.
Well, there's also, I think your 10-speed bike is parked right in front of the old car.
It was a 3-speed. Yeah, the car actually could help you date it. That's a 1920s or 30s car.
Very good.
Except
So this is at the corner of Waterway and Ferry Road, the southwest corner. And here's what it looks like today. And here is the entry from the National Register inventory. And Wendy, is Wendy here? No, I wanted to talk to her because she wrote an interesting paper for a course in 1976, and it's an architectural history of the house.
And the can you point to the little porch there? That was at one point apparently a sleeping porch where I spent my very first summer.
Speak up, Whit. Yell that out.
I spent my very first summer in that sleeping porch. Yeah, I think it was a rental house there.
On the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a 1979 statewide historical preservation report had this to say: other literary and artistic residents of Saunderstown, perhaps better known in their own day, lived in modest shingle houses in this rustic bayside setting, creating for themselves and their offspring memorable summers of vigorous outdoor pursuits, swimming, camping, hunting, fishing, riding in the North Kingstown countryside, interspersed with equally vigorous discussions of matters scholarly, literary, and civic. It was a remarkable flowering, said the writer of the of this in 1979. And I'm going to quote to you from Florence Bayard Lafarge's diary for the first time in this presentation now, and warn you that she was writing her own private diary, not really for public consumption. And although Irving Sheldon quoted her in his book, he was very discreet about it. I'm not going to be discreet. So here's what she said. This is October 13th, 1923, which is around the time this photo was taken of my dad, who was coming down here from Providence. The place seemed crowded this summer and is, alas, growing popular with Providence people. And this is, I believe that this is the house. This house, take a look at the house in the background here, and this house, which is at the bottom of, it's right, you can see it probably right over there. And Whit and I didn't really agree about whether it was the same house or not.
The windows are all different, but the roof is the same.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I see how it is.
Okay, here is Stillman Saunders, and he's got, any children here? Oh, there are going to be on the, yeah. He's got what in my family was called an SEG, right? You can't really see his grin, but it's that kind of grin. Yeah. And there's a wonderful article about how he was a go-getter in business, and he really tried to steal the ferrying business away from the Jamestown and Newport Ferry Company. His company was called the Narragansett Transportation Company. And the link to that is here. By the way, this whole presentation is going to be available on the Willett Library website, and you can download it as a PDF, and there are 6 or 7 or 8 pages of links and bibliography type stuff at the end that you can follow links and, do follow up, because we're just skimming over the surface here, right? I mean, skip the whole 18th century. How could we?
Come back to it.
And this picture we think was taken on the very same day of of Stillman Saunders's crew, and there are their names. So this is 1905. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Vessels at Saunderstown waterfront around the turn of the 20th century. The Saunders family in the latter part of the 19th and into the 20th, quote, built many sloops, some schooners, many catboats, and starting in the 80s, steamers. That's a quote from Irving Sheldon. And here is the ferry Narragansett, coming or going? Do we?
Well, probably a
Double-ended.
Yeah.
The wing is in the back.
So it's going.
In the course. It's coming this way.
Oh, it's coming. Oh,
Coming in because the
so
wing.
it's coming. Yeah.
Maybe it's just starting.
Rockwash looks like he's reversing to slow down.
Whit and I took a field trip over to Jamestown the other day, and we found this wheelhouse from the Hamilton, which is one of the ferries that went across back and forth between here and Jamestown West Ferry.
Where is it in Jamestown?
It's on, what's the name of that street?
It's on private property.
It's on private property.
What is the name of that street?
The street that goes to Beavertail.
Okay, it's just past the liquor store.
Can you guys lift your voices a little bit more?
So, yeah, sorry. Okay, this is Tim Cranston's summation of Stillman Saunders. There are very few individuals who in the course of their lives had a lasting impact on their community. Stillman Saunders was such a man. He took the sleepy little seaside village named after his father, John A. Saunders, Jr., and made it into a transportation hub and a tourist attraction. He transformed the little fishing and shipbuilding hamlet into a place favored by the literati-style celebrities of the age. And this is in contrast with Florence Bayard Lafarge's September 11th, 1903 diary entry. The place has been ruled and to some extent created by Stillman Saunders up to this time. Saunders is able, enterprising, shifty, and shiftless, good-natured, liberal, low-toned, and never to be depended on for 1 minute. short-sighted as to being willing to introduce anything here, and yet with some things he will not do. He cheats and lies, but undoubtedly has done much for the place and has a following. And then the following paragraphs talk about his people who were sort of his followers who liked him. They were all women. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. On the left we have the Willett Free Library. Yep. It was founded in 1885 as the Circle for Mutual Improvement, and the Willett Free Library was the first public library established in North Kingstown. Yeah. The building was designed by summer resident Christopher Grant Lafarge, who was Florence's husband. And he also is known for having designed parts of New York's Cathedral of St. John the Divine. And the 2012 restoration, is that a little squished looking somehow? Or just it's from where my angle? Restoration expansion designed by Clifford M. Renshaw Architects under the leadership of Ellie Ferguson. There she is. Yeah. And here is an early picture of St. John's Chapel and a more recent picture at night. The chapel is described, the history of it is described on page 86 of the Willett Skillet and also on the chapel's website. What was I going to say? It was set up by the Carpenter sisters, who were big into temperance, right, in about 1898. No, sorry, this is at the corner of Willett Road and Church Way. So, yeah. There was a railroad going right through Saunderstown. Seaview Railroad operated from East Greenwich to Narragansett from 1899 to 1922. And I believe that its source of electric power was an electric trolley line, was a coal-fired dynamo in Hamilton, the Hamilton neighborhood of North Kingstown. And you can see part of the right-of-way on Boston Neck Road as you go by Casey Farm. And here's another old picture that shows the railroad tracks in the foreground. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. Wow. And then the ferry landing and a little bit of Saunderstown Village and a ferry boat headed for the north end of Dutch Island, the entirety of Dutch Island, and some of Jamestown in the background. Yeah, the big house looks like it's in the middle of Casey Farm pasture, right? I don't think that's there anymore. And here's what the ferry landing looked like. Near the turn of the 20th century, according to Irving Sheldon's Saunderstown, the ferry boat is the Beaver Tail, which operated from Saunderstown to Jamestown West Ferry until it was destroyed by the Great Hurricane of 1938. And here's what that same view, more or less, looks like today.
Can you back up?
Oh. And here's another shot of the ferry landing, sometime before 1910. And the landing itself was also really decimated in the 38 hurricane, obviously. At one time, it was possible to transport an auto across for a fare of 90 cents. Here's another.
Could you go back one frame?
Yep.
If you see the end of Dutch Island, you can see the buildings that are visible there, and some of them are just ruins now.
More about that shortly.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Here's the waterfront with the Saunders house. We don't know what year this is.
Theo?
But I mean, this kids on the float, on the bathing float there, it looks like it could be today, really. It's just. Thank you, Amy C. Jones, for these wonderful postcards. This one had a postmark of 1913. And this house is still there, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. This is the Burrall's house, Allison's house. She's here, isn't she? Yeah. Here we have another nice picture of ladies walking down Waterway.
Do you know them?
Can't say that I do. So I took the liberty of referring to these yew trees that were supposedly given by Teddy Roosevelt to Owen Wister, bully yew trees, because that was his favorite word, right? We all know Teddy Roosevelt, bully. And according to Tim Cranston in his Swamptown column, Theodore Roosevelt was a frequent visitor around the turn of the last century. He'd stop by often in Saunderstown each summer to visit with his good friends, the Owen Wisters, author of the first true Western novel, The Virginians, and the Lafarges, Oliver and Christopher, Oliver being America's foremost expert on the American Indian. Now, I believe that Oliver was the administrator of the Bureau of Indian Affairs for a time. I don't have the details on that, but here is the C. Grant Lafarge residence. This is where Christopher Grant Lafarge and Florence lived, and where she wrote the diary, all those diary entries from 1903 right up to 1938, I guess or around then was when she ended.
So that's where the Gummo's house.
Yes. 70 Waterway. Burned down in 1945. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at the Saunderstown post office. It's like whack-a-mole. It moved around a lot. Morris Sayer told me today that this building is actually her house on Kavanaugh Court. It was moved a few feet north and added onto. And then here's another. I think this is an earlier post office, and you can see 122 Ferry, which is at the intersection of Saunders Road. As you go up the hill, you'll see this house on your right. It's still there. That is Paul Hazlett. Yeah. Here we have the post office sometime after 1900, and I'm wondering if, And this is, I believe this is 2500 Boston Neck Road now, and I think this might be Emma Briggs herself here, but I'm not sure.
Is this where the candy store was?
Yes.
Yeah, candy.
Well, and we think that the building was substantially switched around, because in some photos the porch is on the west side of the building facing Boston Neck Road, and in some photos it's on the south side of the building facing Ferry Road.
But only by 90 degrees.
And this is obviously where the post office is now, and at the top you've got the description that was in the inventory of the National Register. And the building that you see on the right, I think, was built, was it 1903 maybe? So turn of the 20th century. Whit. Who knew there was a cliff walk in Saunderstown? Well, apparently there was a cliff walk leading to South Ferry. This must have been way before any houses were built down in that part of Saunderstown. Yeah. And again, this is into the 20th century. Five-masted schooners, big ships like this would be going up and down doing I guess they're called coasters, right? And they were doing the coal trade mostly, and other things. Imagine maybe the Briggs grocery store got some stuff off of a ship, maybe. Probably not a ship of that size, though, coming into Saunderstown. Well, we don't know. Here, speaking of the market, here's Briggs Market around the turn of the 20th century. And this is on the opposite, this building, or this location is still there, as you'll see, as we skip through these. And here's what that building looks like today. This is familiar, yeah.
Can you back up one more?
Yeah.
Wow.
Same location. We puzzled over this picture, and if you look at the relationship of the two buildings in this picture, you can see that it's the same thing here, right? And this is obviously the same as this. Yeah. And they were competing, this is the Briggs store, and they were competing against the Kelly store, which I'm not exactly sure where that was. Halfway down Ferry Road, Margie surmises. Yeah. And Saunderstowners have always had a strong connection with Dutch Island, whatever this place is called, right? And it's technically it's part of Jamestown, but we definitely think of it as our own, don't we?
Yeah, we weren't asked about that.
We weren't asked about that. So this is obviously the lighthouse with the lighthouse keeper's house still attached.
Jen, do you
Which,
think that's a stake there indicating, where the Bellevue is now, the Ross put that?
Say that again?
so
think that
it's a
stake
stake
there is,
here to tell people not to go inside there.
Where the Bellevue are
Yeah.
now?
Oh, I thought that was a scratch.
And here's the other end of Dutch Island. You can see the skyline. And actually, Florence Bayard Lafarge described the skyline of Dutch Island at this point as hideous. Do you want to say you say more about Dutch Island?
Yeah, it got the name Dutch Island from the Dutch West India Company, which was a trading post starting in the 1630s, where apparently they were trading fur, fish, venison for goods, cloth, implements, and liquor. And then in the mid-1650s, the colonists purchased it from the natives. In 1825, the federal government acquired 6 acres for the lighthouse, the south end of the island. And the lighthouse was established in 1827. And in 1863, the land was sold to the U.S. government. And then in 1864, to the U.S., or was taken over by the U.S. Army and named Fort Greble after John Trout Greble, who was the first officer of the regular army killed during the Civil War. And it was a military installation until the end of World War II, by which point it had been significantly developed both militarily and also residentially for the officers. There were barracks, there were multiple gun emplacements, and also, sort of evidence of just regular military business, like bakeries and a stable and a hospital. Quite remarkable. Mostly trees.
Not much water, and so there was a period of time when water was ferried over there. I'm not sure exactly when that was, but.
Where'd they get ferries?
But they also had the cisterns.
And they had
There
yeah,
was supposed to be
yeah.
a small pipe that ran across the ferry.
There was a pipe that ran from Saunderstown all the way across the bay.
I guess the ferrying water took place before that.
Probably.
Yeah.
I have a question, if you go back, that one, are those buildings all related to the fort?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
those are not residential?
They were officers' homes. Yeah, yeah. So this is sort of the northeast side. There's a pier here, which is still, this is mostly the east side right here. Go around the corner, and you would see the Jamestown Bridge, right? And yeah, and you can still see the pier. There are great, huge granite blocks there. And also you can see the bluffs on the east side, sort of facing Dutch Harbor.
Is that big building on the right, what was the ruins that we see now?
Probably farther around the corner.
And if you go up in the forest there, you'll see all the foundations of those houses still.
Yeah, the forest. Is that what you said? Yeah, I like that.
It's also overgrown. You really can't get to them without a machete.
Yeah.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah. Go to a neighbor's house.
Here's what the waterway looked like at the turn of the 20th century.
That's the waterway.
The waterway. Oh, by the way, there's a couple of wonderful books about Dutch Island if you want to dig deeper. I think they're both by Walter Schroeder, and at least one of them is listed in the sources and further reading section of this at the end. Here's the Saunders house, and it was built about 1889. So before that, I guess there was some people staying in a hotel situation in what was called the Saunders house before this, which we'll get to shortly.
And so, Steph, for what it's worth, back in those days, it must have been even worse with all of that drinking and carrying on, and the building was closer to the Willow Tea Cottage.
It's a 36-room hotel and no bathrooms. This is later. This picture shows the Willow Tea Cottage. And here is, I mean, look at this, which opened in 1912. And according to Florence Bayer Lafarge, 1912 was a very prosperous summer. Here it is again. This is the postcard advertising that the hotel is for sale. And here you see the laundry annex over on the right-hand side, and I believe this contained a few bathrooms, a handful of bathrooms. So, you know.
And this was from circa 1130, so that was much earlier than we thought.
This is the backside of that same postcard. 36 rooms completely furnished, including linen and silver. Also 8 summer cottages and about 7 acres of land. Located at the steamboat landing, where all boats stop, running from Newport to Narragansett Pier. Going to be sold to a closing estate. A great bargain. Mrs. Lafarge said, and here she is, by the way, finally, at long last. She was quoted by Irving. This is the one discreet quote that he had from her. August 29th, 1912, the sale took place under perfect weather auspices. Many neighbors, some outsiders, a most friendly, interested crowd of people. The hotel and property was bought up by a group of people interested in keeping it running on the same basis as before, no bar, a quiet family hotel. The bidding was done by Sam Kelly, and 17 other people subscribed. So Frances Bayard Lafarge was the daughter of Benoni Lockwood IV and wife of Christopher Grant Lafarge. We talked about that. Her diary runs from 1901 to 1938. And I got it from the Rhode Island Historical Society. I emailed them and I said, I'm doing this talk and I would love to see this resource. How can I get access to it? Does it exist in electronic form? And I don't know if the scan existed already, but it was a typescript that was scanned, and they just emailed it back to me. And so it was wonderful to read. In the oral history collection, a couple of people had interesting things to say about her. Andrew Staley said, she literally was mystical and sort of scary to us. I didn't see her often, but every now and then I'd be going by her place and she'd call me in and talk a little bit. And really, she was just a sweetheart. I really loved her. And actually, his oral history's got a whole long story about how she accused him of something that he hadn't done. And you should check it out. It's good. And Betty Allen said, Mrs. Lafarge, with her interest in plants and animals and birds, has left an undying impression. We were allowed to come to tea in the afternoon at the Lafarge's house, where everybody always gathered in Saunderstown. We were allowed to come to tea only if we made and contributed one intelligent or interesting remark. It was particularly prized if it could cause conversation and debate or speculation among the older people. But if you didn't make a good remark, you weren't invited again. That was it. This is a 1984 clipping. Our good friend, the journal reporter Karen Lee Zeiner, collected this oral history from William Stanley Nichols, who worked there. And he talks about what a lively place it was. Really interesting article. And there was a grammar school in Saunderstown. Here's the 1950. I know nothing about this place, but we could surmise. These were not the children of summer people, right? They were the children of the people who were living here year-round. So maybe the Briggses and maybe the children of the people who were in that photo that we looked at of the shipyard workers. The Saunderses probably were in there. I wish if anybody can tell me more about.
That's the house that I'm living in, 71 Minor.
Oh,
On the other side.
so this schoolhouse was in 71 Minor Road.
Yes.
And do you know more about the history of the school?
I don't.
Right across from the park.
Yes.
Near the cemetery that we were. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The landlord told me that. Wow.
Yeah.
So,
So this is the Rest Cottage at 54 Willett Road. It's now a private residence. It was built in 1890 by the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So it was a hotel for sober women. Is that right? Yeah.
Is it still operating that way now?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
it's not there anymore, is it?
No, it's there.
This is it.
It's occupied by hippies and musicians.
And here we have, thank you, Robin Squibb. She's here somewhere.
Hi, Robin.
At left, we have Helen Ostby, a fixture in Saunderstown and a survivor of the sinking of the Titanic around 1920. And at right, Granny Squibb. You've all heard of Granny Squibb and Aunt Helen in their beloved donkey cart. And I guess I have a little bit of the story of. Whoa, 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 whoa.
I feel like we should bring donkey carts back.
And this is, I'm going to read to you from a Providence Journal article from 2017 about Helen Ostby, just to give you a little bit of her story. Young Helen R. Ostby always liked traveling to Europe with her father, the co-founder of Ostby and Barton Jewelers, Providence. In 1912, they bought tickets to sail aboard Titanic, concluding a vacation in Egypt. And they got on the Titanic, and at first there was little panic, but even the initial boarding of lifeboats was viewed more as a precaution than anything, she said. Quote, the idea had been talked up so long ahead of time that the Titanic was unsinkable, it was hard to get it out of people's minds, she said. The boats were being gotten ready, and the word came that women and children should get into them. The men stood back to await their turn, and that was the last we saw of my father. So,
And her fiancé.
and
Really?
Her father and
her fiance
were on
also
board.
was there too.
She never married.
Okay, let's get rid of that. And because you can never get enough of Granny Squibb. Here she is as a young woman at the wheel. And I'm sure you've seen this picture. If you haven't seen it, go get yourself a bottle of Granny Squibb's and, right? And here on the right is Granny Squibb serving tea here at the SYC. Yeah.
In the old clubhouse.
In the old clubhouse, which we're going to see in a minute again. Here is a picture of Ferry Road looking towards the water, looking east. And here's the library right here. And here is where Jim and Allison now live, at the corner of Briggs. And I think all these houses are still there.
They sure are.
They don't show up in this picture, sorry, but similar kind of view. And here's Willett Road before 1918. And here's what it looks like now, a little bit different. And this is Caswell Court, which he's the guy who developed it with Stillman Saunders. And it was changed later when he sold all of the property there to Mr. Kavanaugh. The houses in this shot were built in 1912. Thank you, Bob O'Neill, for this one. Okay, we get to talk about the fun stuff now. Okay, first we're going to go back to Florence's diary entry from, this is Events of 1914. Whit insisted. Here, why don't you read it?
What am I reading?
This one, these two paragraphs right here.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Starting here or starting here?
Right there.
So the events of 1914, there was a terrific onslaught of tent caterpillars on wild cherries and apple trees. Thousands of nets destroyed by the school children, Mrs. Biddle paying a penny for 10. William C. Caswell completed the 4 cottages and garage on land back of the hotel to rent. All rented $300, $400, $600. And
So how many tent caterpillars would you have to, nests would you have to collect? Let's see.
and what would those pennies be worth today?
I don't know. Put that down. Okay,
Thanks.
okay. All right. Okay, let's talk about prohibition and rum running. I didn't really understand the distinction until I read about it on Wikipedia. Rum running is the smuggling of alcohol over sea, and bootlegging is over land. Okay, it's an interesting fine distinction. So legend has it that a recently demolished house on Sea Ridge Drive in what we now call the West Passage neighborhood, just over the border in Narragansett, was a center for rum running activity in the 1920s. And I'm going to read to you more of Florence's diary because she's so entertaining, right? Yeah. June 3rd, 1923. There has been an immense amount of rum running all winter here and at South Ferry. In one instance, the federal officers were reluctantly warned by the sergeant in charge of Fort Kearny as the truck was stuck in the sand and dawn was breaking. 175 cases taken, 100 turned over to the USG. I guess that's the government. Jid Gardner says that wine is being made by, quote, a still back in the woods, quote. Oliver tested it. Sweet and heady tastes of wild grapes. The Romano brothers, who make an excellent port and fair sherry, live above Wickford, with a license as it is used for communion wine. Were attacked at night by a party of hijackers who tried to rob his cellar. They fired on him, and he and his brother fired back and killed one of them. He was promptly acquitted, but says he's going back to Italy as a more law-abiding country. And then from May 31st, 1924, a cold, wet spring following a lovely, mild winter. The principal interest centers on bootlegging and its results. In March, the Hummocks was raided and over $2,000 worth of liquor taken, the Johnson boys getting off with the 2 motorboats. On May 17th at 9 p.m., a car drove into Archie Rose's barnyard, the Casey farm we're talking about, and 2 men asked permission to place some cases in his empty crib. He refused. They begged, and after a while he yielded and gave them the key. Receiving $50, they put in their cases and locked the crib and departed. At 2 a.m., the house was surrounded by 2 truckloads of men, about 20, the telephone wires cut, and the Roses awakened by the dogs and noises. They told him to shut his window or they would shoot. He took his gun and fired in the air. He was answered by a fusillade, which broke all the windows. He fired again, and a second fusillade followed. He and Mrs. Rose kept from the windows after that. Should have gotten away from the windows sooner, maybe? Then they broke open the crib, took all the liquor, and departed. The body of a man was found the next morning on the Anaquatucket Road, north of the turn to Mrs. Baker's, with 4 or 5 bullets in it. Archie reported this to the chief of police. The men belong to a hijacking gang, and everyone is afraid that they may have it in for Archie and do him harm. They were trailing the regular bootleggers. And let's see, on October 28th, she writes, the excitement of the summer has been the sale of the Johnson land for $23,000 by Logan, who is the agent. The buyers first bought out Charlie Carr's lease, which only ran to November and was merely paying the taxes for $3,500 that he would quit on August 1st. They then started to build a cellar, very deep indeed, on the extreme edge of the cliff in the north field, a concrete cellar, room on one side for a car, a rather pretty 1-story house. Everyone is sure it is being used for the landing of liquor and that a small pier will be built. Johnson of the Hummocks runs a fast motorboat to Rum Row, and he is supposed to be the owner. So Rum Row would have been an area kind of outside the 3-mile limit where they couldn't be touched by the government. And at a certain point during Prohibition, I don't remember exactly when this took place, but the boundary was extended to 12 miles, so it made it a little bit harder for the smaller boats to go out to the big boats to unload the liquor and bring it back, but they did it anyway, right? And let's get to Alex Randall's account. Where is that? Oh, you got it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
So Alexander Randall IV was interviewed by his son, Alexander Randall V, also known as A5, and talked about quite a number of things. But the one time there was he mentions, I remember also that when we were in the Saunders house, the hotel, it was the only time in my entire life that I'd seen guns fired in anger. One night a rum runner was headed up the bay with the Coast Guard in hot pursuit. And A5 asked, this was during Prohibition? He said, yes, Prohibition was in until late 1932, and so the rum running was a very big business in the area. And I remember watching the Coast Guard chasing the rum runner up the bay and then firing his 1-pound cannon at him. It didn't harm anybody or anything. The rum runner was actually much faster than the Coast Guard, but they were actually shooting at them. Actual gunfire? He said, yes, the real thing, right in front of the Saunders house. And which still happens today.
And this is a wonderful oral history. You should really, if you haven't heard it, it's on the library website. Check it out. Alex Randall also describes how his parents would talk to people in their cars lining up for the ferry to catch up on all the Philadelphia gossip. Right? There was a gas station at the top of the hill. And take a look at, where's the pointer here? Look at this. We think that the front porch of this is facing towards Boston Neck Road.
There's another slide coming up that shows the same columns that is the front porch of what we think of as the country store, right? And there they are. This is Boston Neck Road, and going downhill is Ferry Road. But if you back up, it looks like the porch is facing Ferry Road. So we think Bert lifted the house up at some point and spun it 90 degrees.
Robin?
Go back, check the roof line.
You know where the booking base still was by the post office?
Oh, right across the street too. There was two grocery stores and 2 gas stations. Wow. Wow.
This is on the other side.
This is on this side.
This is on this side.
Yeah. And that's Peter's red truck.
You can see that the gable is facing,
Yep.
and here the flat roof was facing, so they
Yep.
turned the house, not the porch.
Yep. Amazing, right? A lot of houses being moved around in Saunderstown. You look at the roof here, and look at the roof here. Yeah.
Son of a gun. It'd be easier to move the porch.
It'd be easier to leave it alone.
Yeah. Here's a picture of the SYC clubhouse the year after it was founded, closer to the beach. And another view, similar era. Thank you, Bob. Well, so sad, but great for those of us who enjoy playing tennis and sailing, that in 1933, the board, the corporation of the Saunders House decided, well, a 34-room hotel with only 6 bathrooms just ain't going to cut it no more. Is that maybe what they were thinking? And it was torn down. And it's a wonderful clipping that describes who some of the visitors were. I don't know. I'm not going to read all of that, but maybe you can see some of it. And if you're really curious, you can go and ask Jennifer at the Willard Free Library to show you this clipping. Jesse Null remembers the cars lining up for the ferry too, but there were no Hispano-Suizas on the ferry line much after 1929. So the Depression hit the summer trade. I think that probably the shipbuilding kept on going on somewhat, a little bit, into the 30s. And here is what was also known as the Saunders House and known as the Homestead. And Jesse's family rented the house in the 1930s, and Jesse leaned over the balustrade as his friends congregated on Ferry Road below. And his stories are wonderful too, in his oral history. And now you get a chance to talk about those balusters, those precious balusters.
Is Ann here?
Is Ann Ferrante here?
She's not. This was a trademark balustrade on the window there, and I don't know, sometime in the 90s, I think, when Bill Ferrante was alive, most of them had fallen into disrepair, and he asked me, because he knew that I spent time at the woodworking shop across the street, the strip joint, with my friend Craig, who's a master woodworker and also can turn balustrades on a lathe. And Bill asked me, do you think I should repair them or have them rebuilt? And I said, absolutely. It's a famous part of the house. And so he did. He had one that was still in good enough shape that could be used as a pattern. And I just remember the upshot of that was that he was rather surprised by how much that cost. But he did it, and they're there now, and they look fantastic. So, and what?
Bert and All's father, Jesse, was very happy. All right.
Is this the oldest house?
We think so.
Is it what?
Is this the oldest house?
We think it is. And notice how it changed. Yeah.
The Willett Farm up on Neck Road.
Oh, Casey Farm, you mean? Or
Willett Farm.
the Willett, there's a
Willett
building?
Bill, the original mayor of New York who came here.
That's here in the village?
Willett Farm.
Oh. Okay, well, we didn't get a photo of that, I'm sorry to say. Here's an aerial view from 1931. You can see Boston Neck Road here, Ferry Road here, Briggs Road, Willett Road.
Right. Go ahead that way.
The house
Whoop.
facing
The
Third.
water changes color. Yeah, out in the top edge, it looks like land, but it's
Yeah, and then you can see the ferry dock up there. Okay, we're almost out of time, so we got to kind of move along here. Alexander Randall describes the model boat sailing that took place in the 30s on Casey Pond. Good story. Here is the dock after 1938 hurricane, or the ferry landing. You can see it's kind of wrecked, and I guess the SYC got busy in building its own dock. The Jamestown Bridge opened in 1939. At this point, there wasn't really much of a need for ferry service anymore, so it stopped. A fleet of lollies came into the SYC. They were plywood keel boats. Nobody thought they would last more than a couple seasons, and there's still a few around, right?
I think Theo has all of them.
Lisa's got one, Doris has one or two, I've got one and two hulls that need to be rebuilt.
You're going to get right on that?
Nope.
I believe that this is the last summer the SYC was opened before the war, and then it closed for a few seasons during World War II. And here is Spindrift. Yeah. And on the website Small State, Big History, there are a couple of wonderful manuscripts, including the one that I've taken a screenshot of on the right by Louise Sheldon McDonald. And actually, your mom's manuscript.
Yeah, her mom and Aunt Lulu were sisters.
Yeah, but
And they both had articles.
And Irving was her brother.
right. But Betty Ashman wrote another story of Spindrift.
Kristen Burney interviewed
Yeah.
her and wrote up an article, and then
Yeah.
Lulu sent in her article about growing up.
Well, they talk about entertaining the German prisoners of war during.
No,
right?
No, it was the American officers who ran the camp. It's a German, it was a very loosely run camp, but it wasn't,
Oh, I thought they entertained the POWs. You're telling me no? Oh, okay.
No, they did.
POWs entertained themselves, they had a newsletter.
Yeah, in Fort Kearny, right? Yeah.
Well, it's out there.
My father watched movies with,
The POWs
no,
with the officers.
right down at the bottom of South Fair Road.
Oh.
I have stories of him.
Let's talk.
Because there's a big history with my family.
So we had another big hurricane in 1954. And then there was a long tradition of chicken barbecues done by the Chapel of St. John the Divine, and it got to be pretty big. It got to be so big that they just couldn't do it anymore. And this is the front side of the building that they're, I believe, which is the Saunderstown Fire Barn.
The fire horn at noon every day? Yes.
Here's the old launch in maybe 1960.
And for a bonus prize, can anybody figure out what's wrong in this picture? Theo, I'm counting on you. Bert, good call. The Burgee's upside down.
Okay, let's move on. So there was a regatta with members of the America's Cup Challenger Scepter, and Dad took a few pictures, and I thought I would include them here. And here, in this picture, you can see Martha and Macy Webster, and I'm not really sure who all the other people are. They might be Scepter people. And here you can see the Scepter people presenting to Andrew Staley, Jesse Nall, and others the life ring from the Scepter, which is right up there on the wall.
There. How stinking cute is that?
That's me. I'm sitting in front of the house where I now live, and I'm just about to lean over and eat a handful of lead paint.
That's right, we all did.
So this shows you, a few years later, chicken barbecue, it got really big. Okay, Whit, let's talk about you.
Look, I'm barefoot.
The guy on the right in the left picture is Matt, and he's the guy who christened this neighborhood the Magic Kingdom. And Whit, you can see how scrawny he is in that picture on the right, and how tempting it might be to bully him.
He comes across now as mild-mannered. Not in the 60s. But I loved my Maxwell House coffee can.
This is what my road looked like in 1970. Pretty woolly. Yep. Okay, the Saunderstown Weaving School, founded in 1974, celebrates its 50th anniversary this year. Norma's right here. Love you, Norma. For those of you who don't know, the Saunderstown Weaving School is an internationally recognized school with Norma's wonderful individualized instruction.
And for those of you who don't know, Norma is a national treasure.
And Norma contributed these two photos of the 1976 Bicentennial Parade in Saunderstown, and I'm actually in this picture. I'm right here. You notice that I have a camera around my neck. You can see my flaming red hair. And I really do not understand what the people were doing in bathtubs, but and these are the pictures that I took with the camera that you saw in the other slide. And we think that this is John Knaus driving this pickup truck, and we couldn't quite figure out who this guy is. Somebody in here probably knows.
Jack Bash.
Well, this is William Knaus and Eliza Cope in the bathtubs here. And Whit, I feel sure that you should know who these two guys are in the upper left, but okay, moving along. Okay, Ken Outerbridge, his oral history. I would like to read you the whole thing. We don't have time. You're going to have to go and look for that he talks about the bust in 1977. The cops, well, there was, just like rum running, although it was bales of marijuana that were being brought up the bay and dropped off at this house in Plum Beach. And so hence, Saunderstown is halfway between the old bootlegger's house and the new grass mansion. Did I get all that right?
You did. It was 1977. There was a fishing vessel sort of anchored off of Brenton's Reef for a number of weeks, and nobody really understood why until it became clear to the government that they were running bales of marijuana at night up the bay and somewhere up to this house just south of the bridge. And they figured it out. And I did a little bit of the math on this, and they talked about that there were approximately 31 bales of marijuana that were confiscated during the raid, and depending on the math you do, at either 30 pounds or 50 pounds per bale, it comes out to somewhere between $1 and $2 million in 1977 math, right? And the good news is, I mean, we talked a lot about the rum running and also the marijuana. The good news is both are now legal, right? So, and rumor has it there's some production of both of those in the village. So,
The oral history talks about Elliot Bassett, who was bumped off, according to Ken, in the St. Regis Hotel. He was pushed out of a high window because he threatened to tell the story of the smuggling. And his bikini-clad girlfriend, Bernadette. It's really juicy stuff. Ken Outerbridge.
pictures of that?
No.
Oh.
Okay, we have to talk about the Willet Skillet. I'm pretty sure the library has circulating copies of this, and it's got wonderful drawings by Shirley Sheldon and historical sketches. Yes, a time capsule of recipes of the time, yes. Yeah. Saunderstown Historic District was entered into the National Registry of Historic Places on July 19th, 1985, and residents ask why. Chief among them, the chief historian of Saunderstown, Irving Sheldon, is quoted here in this article. Let's see, can we read any of his quotes? No.
To be perfectly honest, John was reluctant to have so many people from Wickford come down here because now you know where we are.
No, that was you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mixed that up.
So we already talked about the Oral History Project, which was initiated by Peg Squibb in 1985. And they were recorded, the earlier ones were recorded on cassette, and Maura Sayre, who's here, digitized, I think, the whole shebang. And yay, Maura. And many of them, yes, many of them have now been transcribed, and the project is ongoing. And if you would like to be interviewed, talk to Jennifer Shaker or talk to me, or talk to Maura. Talk to Maura, I guess. Yeah. Right? Maura, are you up for that? Yeah. Okay, good. And this is where all those interviews are archived on the Willet Free Library website, willetfree.org/history. Another special place in some of our hearts. Take it away, Whit.
So most of the history that we've talked about is the older history, but there's some new history, and a lot of it was created by our dear friend Kate Vivian, right in the center. Kate Polsky Sexton Vivian, who came to Saunderstown probably in the 70s, and she was raising goats on Old Boston Neck Road, and then she bought the house on Ferry Road. And she was, many of you might remember, the person who ran the events at the Towers in Narragansett, and she was all about the music. And one of her son-in-laws was a musician, and so she knew about starving musicians, and so she was always trying to find rooms, a place to stay for musicians when they came to town for big music festivals, including one that still happens, Rhythm and Roots in Charlestown, and there would be an invasion of Cajun musicians in Saunderstown. And this still happens. In fact, there are 2 Cajuns in Saunderstown tonight. One of them is at my house. I hope.
Can you get him down
There's
here?
probably a party going on there right now. So
We better get you home soon.
this was taken Labor Day weekend in 2017 while they were all in town for the festival, and quite sadly she was sick and died just about 2 months later. But she created a whole a history of Cajuns in Saunderstown and people opening their homes to them, and it's really quite wonderful. It's changed my life. So,
Fond memories of Cape.
these are some of the original catboats built by the
Saunders family, yeah, sure.
right,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
But the boat with the red sails is Quitainus, which, by the way, is the indigenous name for Dutch Island. And the boat was built here in Saunderstown by Irving Sheldon, the author of the book. He was over 70 when he started, and he took, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to build it. It's a Haven 12.5, which is a variation on a Harrisoff 12.5.
And he was great good pals with Halsey Harsoff.
Slightly shoaler draft than a 12.5, and with a centerboard. But otherwise very similar. And that's Lynn and Steve Hale.
On the Aerolia, which is Latin for sandpiper, the name of the model of the boat.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh. Nice
At
pick.
least that's what they told me. Oh, that's an awfully nice picture. And to be clear, there's an apostrophe. It's half Whit's. My brother owns the other half, okay?
Like half fast, Captain.
Exactly.
Everybody remember the pandemic? Everybody remember January 6th, 2021?
Yep.
Yeah. This picture was taken about 4:30 p.m. We were all on tenterhooks.
Except for Pepper.
Happier times. This is an aerial shot taken by my daughter Olivia's wedding photographer, showing
2 years ago.
today. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Did you plan that?
And the grandchild on the way.
Crazy paddle boarders.
So interesting that 1979 list of activities didn't mention sailing or tennis or paddle boarding, right? But this has become very big here. And this, I like this quote from Irving Sheldon's book, and this is where we're going to close. We tend to oppose change in order to retain the values which we have appreciated in the past. But change comes anyway, and in this continual battle, people have to adapt to some degree or lose what they have been treasuring. It is fascinating not only to see what changes have taken place, but also to note what has not, or what changes have tried to take place and failed. And when I read this to Whit, he said, what? And one example is, Stillman Saunders really wanted the railroad tracks to go right down to the ferry landing. Think about how different this neighborhood would be if that had happened, right? I mean, all kinds of things like that. And you saw in this how houses changed angles and small stuff, but yeah, there was also the possibility of big changes that didn't happen.
Holding up the moon.
I want to say one more thing, and that is, if you have to do a slide presentation, if you have to do an oral history, if you have to do any sort of presentation to a great group of people, there are no better partners that you could have in that than John Edwards and our silent partner in the back, Jennifer Shaker.
You got a lot of reading to do. A lot. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Whit.